Hello and welcome to the Gnostic Warrior Radio and podcast, broadcasting from GnosticWarrior.com in San Diego, California, to around the world. I'm your host, Mo, and my co-host is Vinny Eastwood from New Zealand and the Vinny Eastwood Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Order of the Gnostics. I'm your host, Vinny Eastwood, with co-host Mo Bedard from lonesafe.org. This is also available for the lonesafe.org listeners to get on the podcast. Now, our very special guest today is none other than the illustrious, the famous, and the spectacularly well-viewed YouTube star, although he may not have actually done any of these videos himself, Pastor Lindsey Williams. He is a chaplain, or rather was a chaplain, on a pipeline once upon a time, back in the 70s. And at a time they would never have any idea just how much effect, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, among the riff-raff and the rough of society who can survive out there doing these big jobs, just how much difference a chaplain makes. They had massive decreases in all the kind of unpleasant behavior you can imagine. So much, in fact, that it impressed the runners of this operation to allow the chaplain to, shall we say, have executive status. He stayed in the same places, had meetings in the same rooms as the elite who were running this oil pipeline. And it became very clear that it is not just a pipeline, not just oil, but that there absolutely is a group of people on the face of the earth that control the entire economy and the politicians and have a projected agenda. The chaplain has made friends with some of these people who in their elder years have started to perhaps regret or maybe wish to divulge some of the information of what is coming. And this is why Pastor Chaplain Lindsey Williams is such an amazing and important guest, because very few, if any, other commentators on the internet or anywhere else have actually been in direct contact and had conversations with the elite and are willing to share that information with us today. Chaplain, thank you so much for joining us.
Vinny, you're very kind. You definitely know how to make a man's day. Thank you so very much for such an introduction. Briefly, if I may, I had been the pastor of a church for 12 years and was actually invited by the elite of the world to sit in on their board meetings. It was on their oil field, and it changed my life. I will never be the same person again. Keep in mind, I've been brought up in a wonderful Christian environment all my life, went off to Bible college, pastored church all those years, and all of a sudden I'm thrown into the midst of the most despotic, the most unusual people on the face of this earth. And I didn't know what to do. I literally was amazed at them. So I'd like to ask everyone out there in the listening audience, please, it may be difficult for you to believe that such people exist, but let me say emphatically, there positively is a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world. Now, that was 37 years ago that I lived with the elite of the world for a 3-year period. Sat across the dinner table from them, sat in the same board meeting with them. They now in their 70s and 80s. They still control the world as much today as they did back then. They know everything that goes on behind closed doors. And they have done some things recently, within the past 1 week, that I would call it horrifying. And that's what I'd like to give you today so that you will know that this will be more of an information program than any you've probably been on for a long, long time. I hope you have pencils and paper. I'm going to hit some very technical details. Those of you who are involved in finance, you will love what you're about to hear. Go back and prove it for yourself on the internet. You probably picked up the pieces. Maybe you did not. And basically, this is the way it happened. Wednesday night, June the 19th, while most of you were sleeping, the elite of the world, and bear with me when I use that word elite, because back when I lived with them years ago, I intentionally made friends with many of them, even though their world was one world and mine was a completely different world. And over these years, I've kept in touch with them by phone. A few times we visited each other's home. And I did it intentionally so that I would know just what's going on. And every time they've told me something over these years, it's happened exactly like they said it. So what you're about to hear as to what happened approximately a week ago, you will pick up the pieces and readily understand what they did. It was Wednesday afternoon, about the time of the closing of the markets, that the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Mr. Bernanke, made a statement, and he only placed it in the form of a hint. He really didn't say much. It was intentionally done. This had been planned a long time ahead of time. It had been planned behind closed doors. They knew exactly what they were going to do, and they did it for the purpose of finding out what the markets would do. Now, I know you've heard the news media, you've heard the liberal media, and they said that Mr. Bernanke hinted at the fact that he might possibly cut back on the printing of money. He never said that he was going to raise interest rates, and he never said that he was going to cut back on that $85 billion per month. He just hinted that there was a possibility that he might. The elite were sitting there. They were in their offices watching like a hawk what was going to happen to the markets over the next 24-hour period. And the best way that I know to describe it and put it in layman's terms is to say they did a test run on June the 19th, 20th, and 21st to see what would happen. This had all been planned in advance. This was not a happen. So Bernanke did not say this by chance, and he did not make a slip. He knew exactly what he was saying, and he said it exactly like they had told him to say it. I would call it a test run. Let me try to explain what I mean by a test run. Let's say that Boeing Aircraft produces a new model of an airplane, and they're going to sell it to the airliners. And as soon as they come out with the first prototype, they don't immediately put passengers in it and fly it around the world. They wouldn't dare do that. There'd be too much risk there. Instead, Boeing would send up a test pilot and would test it over and over and over until they got all of the flaws out. Then they would sell it to the airline and they would begin to haul passengers in it. That's exactly what happened in the world of the elite and the money people of the world on June the 19th, 20th, and 21st. They did a test run to see how the markets would respond to something that they are going to do later. I hope you caught that. Going to do later. And how do I know? On Thursday morning, I received 2 emails. I had not heard from my elite friend for a number of months. In fact, he's been very quiet. I was amazed. I did not call him, even though I could have, but I didn't because it's summertime. You don't do too much in the summer, so I let it ride. I didn't know whether he was on vacation or what, and all of a sudden on Thursday morning I received 2 emails in one morning, and when I read them, I was horrified. And I don't know any other way to put it. I knew that Mr. Bernanke had said something on Wednesday afternoon. And I knew that the markets on Thursday morning were really going crazy. But I didn't know why. Understand, I was trained as a minister of the gospel. And for 55 years I have been. I have a bachelor's degree in Bible, but not in economics. So oftentimes when my elite friends tell me things, I have to go to them and ask them what they're talking about. And I did. When I received these 2 emails on Thursday morning, the first thing I did was picked up the telephone And I said, would you please explain? And for 45 minutes approximately, my ear was glued to that telephone as he told me exactly what they had done intentionally and what the outcome of this was going to be. Now, a number of friends of mine called me up on Friday and on Saturday and said, Chaplain, we don't have a collapse of the markets on Monday. The dollar, we may have some bank closings. And I told them, no, you're not. You're not going to have any bank closures. You're not going to have any collapse of the market. Wall Street will pick back up again on Monday. I said this was a test run. What? Yes, a test run. They were trying to see what would happen, and they found out exactly what they wanted to know. And by Monday morning, they had assured the markets that Mr. Bernanke really wasn't going to do it, and everything was all smoothed out a week later, and there were no problems whatsoever. Now, let me try to explain what they did. I hope that you will go and print out the 2 emails that were sent to me. I know they were private, and they were sent to me by one of the insiders, but I felt that I could print them, and I did. And I posted them on lindsey.williams.net. That's my website. Please go, if you will, after the program, and go to Lindsey, Lindsey, Williams.net. I want you to print these out. They're yours. Won't cost you a penny. This is a non-subscriber website. And I want you to go and get these 2 emails, print them out, and then digest them. I'm going to attempt to digest a few of the pieces for you right now. I want to read the first email in order to help you understand. And those of you who are savvy about financial things, you will just pick up on this immediately and see how it was truly a test run. Okay, the first one, I want to read you a section of it. It said the 7-day repo rate, the benchmark rate for the funding cost between banks. And at that point, I'm going to pause long enough to say, those of you who are in finance know that that overnight benchmark repo funding rate between banks has remained at approximately 3.3% as long as you can remember. Now, you go way back, it might have gone down up a little bit, but it remains steady there. And everybody in the banking community and everybody in the derivative community knows that they can depend on that 3.3% approximately. Any transaction they want to do. And while you and I are sleeping on any given night, there are literally billions of dollars that are transferred from bank to bank, from institution to institution, and you don't even know it. You were sleeping, but it was going on by wire. Let's say that one bank needs $1 billion tomorrow. That very easily could happen. There's some big customer out there that might have contacted them and say, we need money, but the bank doesn't have that much in reserve, in liquidity. And so as a result, they would contact some other bank somewhere in the world and say, I'd like to borrow, I'd like for a 24-hour period maybe, I'd like to borrow this from you, and I'll be glad to pay you the 7-day repo benchmark rate of 3.3%. No problem. You know, they know what it's going to cost them to do that. What happened to it on Tuesday night after Mr. Bernanke made the hint as to what he might do? It went from 3.3%. By Thursday morning, it was 8.26%, and by Thursday night and Friday morning, it had gone to 12.33%, and it had basically shut down the interbanking lending and borrowing rate, and it had, for all practical purposes, shut down the derivative market by Friday morning. Now, this is drastic. Some people picked up on it. Until I called my elite friend, I didn't understand it. But the first question he asked me was, if I remember correctly on the phone, he said, Chaplain, do you know the connection between this interbank funding rate, this benchmark rate, and the derivative market? Now, in the 2 emails that he had sent me, there was no reference whatsoever to the derivative market. None. And so I was rather startled, because I remember back about 2 years ago, my elite friend had said to me one day, he said, Chaplain, you've got to learn what the derivatives are. And I said, I don't even know the word. I was a minister. I had not heard the word derivative. He said, Chaplain, it's the most important thing on the face of the earth in the financial field is the derivative market. And he said, you have got to do a crash course on it immediately. And I'd like to express that to you right now. You need, if you have any doubt about what a derivative is, you must do a crash course on derivatives immediately. In the course of that conversation back about 2 years ago, he explained to me how the...
Chaplain, would that be a financial crash course in the derivatives then?
Oh, I would highly recommend that you do a financial crash course in derivatives as quick as you can. And he went on to explain to me how that 30, 40 years ago the derivative market was created. And he said, do you know why it was created? And I said, no. He said it was created for the purpose of someday when the elite of the world get ready to collapse all of the currencies of the world. Did you catch that? Please, this is so important. All, not just the American dollar, not just the euro, not just the Chinese currency or the currency of India or Japan, all of the currencies of the world at one time. Someone said to me when I was talking to him about this on the phone the other day, they said, well, Chaplain, surely China is not controlled by the elite as much as the United States of America or the euro or Great Britain. I said, oh, yes, they are. I said, did you see what happened to the Chinese bank? Please now, those of you in the financial world, you pick up on this quickly. Did you see what happened to ICBC Bank last week in China? It ran out of liquidity. Do you realize that these elite have in place now everything that they want in order to bring about, when they're ready, and they're not ready yet, I want to assure you, I knew it wouldn't happen on Monday morning. Some people thought it would. And the few people that called me, I said, no, nothing's going to happen on Monday morning. It's all over. I said, they're not ready yet. Now, they are going to be ready. And whenever they are ready to do it, they have already used a test run, a dry run if you'd like to call it. They have already tested the markets. They were sitting back watching everything. They knew exactly where it would go. They knew where this bank overnight rate would go. And then by Monday morning, it was back down to normal again. So it had surged. They had done that test case, and they knew exactly what they were going to do. So he asked me, he said, Chaplain, do you know the connection between this and derivatives? And I said, no, I don't. He said, well, let me try to explain. He said, interest rate fluctuation, whether it be the bond, the 10-year bond issued by the Federal Reserve, which normally stays around 2.5. They hope it never goes over 2.5. And they said that rate, as well as this interrate lending for banks, he said, any time that fluctuates, he said, it is catastrophic for the derivative market. And I said, why? He said, because nearly everything in the derivative market is based on how much they can win or lose according to how much that interest rate goes up and down. And he said, not only that, but he said, more money in the derivative market is bet. Now, catch this, please get the word, is bet. Just like a one-armed bandit at a casino in Las Vegas. It is a glorified, super wealthy gambling syndicate. It's all in the world the derivative market is.
That's very true. Even in New York, when derivatives were first postulated, the State Gaming Commission got involved, attempted to regulate them, but weren't successful.
Yes. Interest rate derivatives. Please jot those 3 words down. They are so important. Let's say here is a very, very wealthy people. And it was by the providence of God that I had the privilege years ago of being able to sit with these people and talk with them one-on-one. There were some of them that were so wealthy they could have written a check for $1 million a day the rest of their life and never spent their fortunes. And it was strictly by the providence of God that I was ever allowed to be there so that I could even be here and tell you today what some of them are telling me. And there's one thing that is so important. You may take one of these super wealthy individuals, and let's say that they would like to make, just for the fun of it, $1 million overnight. They would go to another one of their very wealthy individuals, and they say, I would like to bet you a derivative. Now, are you catching this? I would like to bet you an interest rate derivative that the interest rate on the 10-year bond that the Federal Reserve issues tomorrow is going to be 2.5%. And the other individual says, yeah, I'll take you up on that. I'll be willing to risk $1 million on that. Now, they both know that they can go to this interbank overnight lending rate and get that money for 3.3%. They don't have to use their own money to do this. They know they can go over there and get it. And they know the only thing they have to lose is 3.3% out of that $1 million if they make it. But what difference does $1 million make to them if you've got $1 billion? So he said, okay, I'll take you up on that. And he said, I bet you that the 10-year bond is going to be 2.52 tomorrow. But yeah, they bet on just such things as this. They bet on the weather, what the temperature is going to be in a certain place, and they could call it a derivative. But it is the millions that are played in such a gambling den arena. And he said, okay, I'll bet you. So tomorrow morning, somebody wins and somebody loses, and they can literally, all right, I want to give you a figure. Please go and prove this for yourself. This came from the Bank of International Settlements. So you can go and prove it for yourself. You can find it right there on the internet. The Bank of International Settlements says that there are more than $441 trillion. Now, I did not say million. I said trillion. Now, this comes right from their statement last week. There is more than $441 trillion worth of interest rate derivatives sitting out there any given day, and you don't even know about it. You and I can't even think in terms of thousands of dollars, much less billions or trillions, but the elite can. More than $441 trillion has been bet on the movement of interest rates in any one 24-hour period. If you can imagine such going on in the world of high finance, and whenever they know that they can get that money at 3.3% on any given night, they can do their betting, and they do. Now, the elite wanted to try something. They wanted to see what they could do and how interest rates would respond, and they wanted to see it for the reason of whenever they get ready to bring in fully the New World Order, whenever they get ready to bring down the American dollar and the Chinese currency and Japan and the euro all at the same time, they can do it using the method that they have already proven. Any time that I get something from one of these individuals as to what they're doing, I promise you I will post it on lindseywilliams.net. I don't know how to say it, and I don't know how much further we can go here on lack of time in this particular segment, but when that interest rate went up to 12.33, they proved something. They proved exactly what they could do and how they would go about doing it. Now, there are some time frames here that are being worked with, and I want to say emphatically before I get into my next statement or two, don't anyone ever say that Lindsey Williams is setting a date. I am not. Keep in mind, I can pick up the phone and talk with these people when I want to. I don't enjoy talking with them. Someone asked me on a radio show one day, they said, Chaplain, don't you enjoy listening to what some of these wealthy people have to say? And I said, no, I don't. I don't even like to talk with them. I sometimes don't want to know what they tell me. About a year ago, I was on the phone with one of them. And you remember about a year ago was a time that everybody thought that the markets were going to collapse? You know, you remember. They thought over the summertime something was happening. And all kind of predictions imaginable that September and October would be October surprise. And many, many newsletters came out and lost their credibility in saying there was going to be a collapse. And I happened to be on the phone with one of the elite, and he indicated to me, he said, Chaplain, you have nothing to worry about for the next year and a half. And I said, what? He said, no. He said, you don't have a thing to worry about. I went on radio shows all over America after that. And I said, there's not going to be a financial collapse in the next 3 months. 3 months later, I'd go back and ask him again just to make sure I didn't want to stick my neck out too far. And he'd say, no, Chaplain, not going to be a financial collapse. Well, I want to tell you right now, there's not going to be a financial collapse. There wasn't one on Monday morning. There's not going to be one for the next 3 months. You don't have to worry about a thing this summer. They do have it planned. And he said to me back a year ago, he said, Chaplain, you don't have a thing to worry about for a year and a half. A year has gone by. I am not sitting 6 months from now. Please, don't you dare go say Lindsey Williams said that.
Lindsey, yes, this is Mo with Loan Safe. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are in the mortgage industry or they're being affected by it right now, and they're dealing with banks. There's homeowners here on loansafe.org. And I know that these things that happened with Bernanke, that caused interest rates to rise, of course, as you mentioned, and that's affecting, you know, people in the mortgage market big time. But what I also noticed, you said you don't like to set dates, and I could appreciate that, and that's what I really love about you. And I've been listening to you for the last 3 years, even, I think it's 5 years now since the crisis started in 2007. I think I first heard you on Alex Jones. But what I want to know is are they big on dates? Even though you say that you don't want to set dates, are the elite big on dates? Because this past week, when you had mentioned the 19th to the 20th, when they were doing all these things, we were having the supermoon, you know, and that was the new full moon. So I was wondering, were they planning this because of those dates coming?
They do somewhat. Let me try to explain that by saying that when I lived with the elite of the world, I found that there were many different mindsets and classes of elite. You have some who are part of the occult, and you have many who are not a part of the occult. All the elite that I ever met had American citizenship. There are some that live outside the United States of America. And they come. Some will be date setters, such as 9/11, such as January the 1st, such as the full moon, and that will mainly be amongst the occult group. And then there are others who are not so big on that. So yes, you're right. There are some that are.
Okay, gotcha. Because I found it peculiar that we were having that new moon, and I know that the occult can be big on that, and maybe some of the people that are in the finance industry or the banking don't really follow that as much, you know, but they, of course, are moving the millions and billions of dollars, such as you had mentioned, you know, and I look at the news from those days on Wall Street, and it was huge. You're right. You know, the UK is considering splitting the Royal Bank of Scotland. That happened that day into two banks. One housing the lender's healthy assets, and the other its pile of trouble loans and securities. So basically, the Royal Bank of Scotland is going to split their bank in half. One's going to house all their good stuff, and the other one's going to house all their crap. You know, and then the four largest banks in America, on that day, this is June 20th, they failed to comply with the key elements of the landmark $25 billion mortgage settlement. And remember, in 2007, that's what started this whole market kind of collapse and all this the scariness, you know. And I remember hearing you on Alex Jones and InfoWars at that time, and you were talking about this, and you weren't setting dates, but everybody was scared that the market was going to collapse in the economy, and it's been a roller coaster since 2007 to now.
And they're not ready yet. You know, this is really wonderful to be able to say this, because there is a window of opportunity out there right now that is so glorious for every person that wants to do something with a dollar that is still fairly good in purchasing power. Now, it won't be that way 6 months to a year from now, maybe. But right now, it's still there. If you need to take that paper, that Federal Reserve note, that worthless, no backing, if you want to go and do something with it, you still have the opportunity to do it right now. And now is the opportunity that you need to take. I would not wait any longer. This weekend, And it very well could have been because of the occult. But they chose this weekend as a time to do a test run. And they found out everything they wanted to know. And now they know exactly how to do it when they're ready. So I want to tell you that when they're ready to do it, they'll do it just like they did this weekend. You'll see it happen just that way. And it will bring the interest rates up. It will bring the derivative market to a complete screeching halt, which is estimated to be approximately 2 quadrillion. We can't even comprehend such as that. I can't even comprehend 1 quadrillion. I can't even comprehend a billion. My mind didn't work in those terms. But they say that the derivative market is approximately 2 quadrillion, and they can bring every currency of the world down when they're ready to and when they want to. Now, this past weekend was a test run only, and that's the reason by Monday morning they had smoothed everything out, and they went right back about their business just as always because they had proven exactly what they wanted to do. So you can use this as an example, and I have promised everyone that anytime I receive a communique from any of these people that I feel is noteworthy, that I will post it on LindseyWilliams.net. Now, I don't post things there every day because they don't communicate with me every day. It may be once a week, maybe once a day, maybe once a month. But anytime I get something very significant, I will post it there. And Denny, I'll make you a promise that any time that they give me something that I feel is very prominent to your welfare, I will contact you. And I will say, I have something here that you need. I did that this past week, Benny. That's the reason you got my email. And I said, I need to give you this in a hurry. They have fairly well assured me that they will let me know, just out of courtesy, a few weeks or maybe even a month or so in advance before they plan to bring about the collapse of the currency.
Well, Chaplain Williams, I have a question for you. Being as you're a man of God and some of the elite, as we've discussed, men of Satan, I was wondering what your kind of spiritual feeling about this is, and do you have any kind of, I don't know, deep feeling of dark occulted dread when you speak with these individuals?
Fortunately, I have read the last chapter because I've been a student of the Scriptures for 55 years now, and I knew that all of this was going to happen at some point. I just didn't quite know that it was going to happen in my lifetime. But I'm glad I'm living today. You know, if God had allowed me to choose what time in all of history that I wanted to live, I would have chosen today. I think this is the most exciting time that has ever been. Now, the occult is very, very present amongst these people. And I didn't enjoy their company in some cases. In fact, it was quite obnoxious. Not all of them are part of the occult, just some. As far as my relationship with them was concerned, those who were part of the occult, they have not kept in touch with me, and I haven't kept in touch with them. I would say they're the more moderate type that have, but it's been great to be able to get from them the information I have. I don't know how to say it except that I did have an opportunity to witness many of them, and I took the advantage of that opportunity. And instead of turning thumbs down, oftentimes they would listen to me. I even had some of them to attend my services when I was ministering to the pipeliners. So as far as their occultish ideas are concerned, they think they're going to do certain things, and many of them think they are God, but they're mere men. And this is the difference between what they think and what I think. I know that they're going to lose in the end, because that's what the Bible says. Now, how it's all going to come about between now and then, it's going to be interesting to find out.
Okay. Now, back into the 7 days. You had this email that you sent to me that you said the information was basically most important to get out in the next 7 days. Why specifically just this time frame?
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're going to be able to edit this. I don't think that they gave me a time frame of 7 days.
Okay, this was just to get the information out so that people wouldn't panic after this test run.
Okay, you go back and ask your question again or kind of rephrase it a little bit. All they did was told me that this is what they were doing over the weekend and that everything would be okay by Monday morning.
Oh, okay. Well, then we've got nothing to worry about.
No, I have no concerns whatsoever. I know that they are going to do this at some point. They did the test run, and someday they will use this as a method. Now, if you think back on it, they did this identical same thing in September of 2008 when we had the last financial major event that took place. They used the exact same scenario, except this time they're going to do more than just bringing the banking system to its knees as they did in 2008. They're going to bring the derivative market to its knees. This is what is so drastic about this particular test case, is the fact that they were testing it for both the bank rate of interest and the bond rate. They were testing it this time to see what would happen to the derivative market in relation to it. And this is where the drastic part of it comes in.
So the goal, Lindsey, is basically to, of course, implode the economy and then extract the wealth of anybody that has it remaining in the market, and the end of the dollar, you had said also other currencies as well. The goal is a new world order, which it has been for several centuries, or some might say at the start of the Catholic Church. What will happen if this happens? Have you studied this at all? I know basically you're saying it's the end of everything, and money and the markets and so forth. Will there be panic across the board down here to Main Street as well? What will people like yourself and myself, who don't have a lot of money or any money in the market, have to worry about?
Well, they have explained this to me, and I know exactly what to expect. They have a number of options because they aren't quite so sure how people will react either. But let's just go then into the details of this as much as I can. First of all, let me say that it was not a slip of tongue on the part of Mr. Bernanke on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. He did that intentionally. It was already told him what to say, and they wanted to see what the reaction was. Now, next time they do it, when they actually get ready to bring about the final, their purpose in doing it will be to bring in the new world order. And someone asked me on a show the other day, there was a call-in, and they said, Chaplain, you say that you knew these elite? I said, yes. You say that most of them that you knew had citizenship in America? I said, that is correct. There are a few foreign ones, but I didn't meet them. I met ones from America. And they said, let me ask, why would the elite destroy their own country? You say that the currency is going to lose its purchasing power, we'll have major problems across the country, the bank probably is going to have a closure, the currency may be devalued. They said, why would the elite destroy their own country? And my answer, which will answer your question, is they aren't destroying their own country. You have to understand the mindset of the elite in order to understand what they're doing. They are not bringing about destruction. They are bringing about total control. Let me try to explain that. The elite want to bring in the New World Order. And they want to bring in a one world currency. And they want to be at the control of all of this. But at the same time, they do not want to destroy the infrastructure. If, when all of this happens, people begin to riot, it won't be because they caused it that way. They don't want that. The elite want to bring in the New World Order their way. And how do they want to do it? They basically would like to get it to the point that your children are crying for food, that you can't afford to put gasoline in the gas tank because the dollar has lost so much of its purchasing power. They want to get it to the place that you will beg for a new constitution and for a new currency. And whenever they've gotten you to that point, then they will bring about what they want to in order to accomplish their purpose of the name of the game is control. And that's really what it's all about. It's not about destruction. It's not that they're destroying their country. They're bringing about a total control of the country. They want control of, well, for instance, they want you to lose the mortgage on your house so that you can't make the payment for such a period of time. They come in and repossess the house. And who is it that's buying all of these mortgage-backed securities? It's the Federal Reserve. Who is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve is the elite. It is not an agency of the government of the United States of America any more than Federal Express is. But yet they're buying mortgage-backed securities at the rate of approximately $45 billion per month. They're buying these mortgage-backed securities at that rate. Now, who is it that owns the mortgage on your house, the mortgage on the church, the mortgage on the shopping center down the street? And when that mortgage can't be paid, who is it that is going to come in and repossess? Not the bank, not the lending institution. They have already been paid for that mortgage, and now the Federal Reserve owns it through this bond program that they've got of buying back mortgage-backed securities.
Isn't it interesting when you think about the words mortgage-backed securities? Mortgage means death grip, derived from the Latin. Back means they're going to stab you in it. And security means tyranny. So it's a tyranny that's going to stab you in the back with a death grip device.
You're exactly right. And they want you to not be able to pay that mortgage for so many months. Then they step in because they already own it.
Chaplain, it's not just a couple of months. I've seen some of these contracts, at least here in New Zealand. They can call in the mortgage. And if you can't make the final payment, if you pay off your entire house, you get to keep it. But if you can't pay off your entire house right then and there when they make the call in, they can take it.
Yeah, well, it's similar here in America, but, per the state laws, every state has their different laws. But I'm sure you're well aware, Lindsey, that they're not really doing that here. They're actually letting people stay in their homes sometimes a year, 2 years, 3 years. I've counseled with people that haven't paid their mortgage, and it seems like the banks, it's kind of what you're saying now on this podcast, is they're playing this game with the money and the derivatives and billions and trillions of dollars. And I would almost include all these people that are sitting in their homes not paying their mortgage. And they basically have, I would say, millions of these people right now where they could kick them out any day that they want. And that goes along with what you're saying is, not having enough money, from paying your mortgage down to feeding your kids. And I see it. It's almost like we're frogs in a pot here in America. And it's not just America. It's happening in New Zealand where Vinny's at. It's happening in Ireland. It's happening in every country, like you said.
If you've got many people who are currently not paying their mortgages and they're not being kicked out or repossessed by the banks, something tells me that they're waiting for something, the very right and correct time when they take everybody's house.
They are playing a glorified game. And they know that it doesn't matter right now whether that person makes that mortgage payment or not. Because down the line, whenever they get ready to collapse the currency of the world, including the United States of America, at that point they can definitely step in and say, there is positively no hope. You've been here all of these periods of time. Now, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will be glad to take this house back. And we'll let you live in it. We'll let you continue to live, and we'll discharge your rent to you and later to your children. This is exactly what they want. They do not want to bring riots in the street. I know that a lot of the talk show hosts disagree with me on this, but I have talked with the people, and their goal is to bring in the New World Order because you want them to do it. If your child is crying for food, you're going to want a new currency so that you can afford to buy food and put gas in that gas tank. And it'll finally get to the point where you will say, okay, I will take something besides our Constitution. Just help me out of this mess that the whole country is in right now. And if they can create a great enough gradual frog boiling in the pot scenario crisis until they can get you to want to do it. This is the reason that they have held off since the last few months of George Bush, is because they weren't ready for the crisis yet. They were able to bring in QE 1, 2, and 3 in order to prolong it intentionally according to design in order to get it to the point where the people would want and beg and plead for what they want to give you. And at that point, they can bring it in. Hopefully, they hope that they can bring it in without civil unrest. If they do get civil unrest, they're ready. The internment camps are out there. They've already bought the ammunition. They've already bought the vehicles ready, and they're ready in case that happens. But that's not necessarily what they want, and yet they're holding off and holding off and holding off, getting things into a point. Now they've made that test run last week, and now they've got everything right ready so that when they get ready to, hopefully they have people mentally prepared also. Another item here that you'll find so very interesting. I was on the phone one day with one of these people, and a very strange conversation was going on. And we were talking about food. After all, everyone out there, I'm sure, has your preparedness, long-term preparedness foods in, and you've got plenty of water stored. You know, that's a given that most everybody has done that. And the question came up, and he said, well, Chaplain, there's not going to be any shortage of food on the grocery store shelves. And I said, now, you know, you're hearing this everywhere. Get your storage foods in because you're not going to have any food. No. He said, Chaplain, that's not it. He said, there's not going to be any shortage of food and water on the grocery store shelves, but he said, you may go hungry. And I said, would you please explain? He said, the currency is going to lose its value to the point that even though the food will be on the grocery store shelves, they don't want that panic of there being no food on the grocery store shelves. That's the last thing they want. And you notice the shelves are still full and plenty of groceries there, and nobody is saying that there's going to be a shortage. I mean, they're saying there's going to be a shortage. A lot of the patriot groups are saying it, but there's no shortage yet, and there's not going to be. What they want to do is devalue the currency to the point that you go hungry because you can't afford to pay the price that the food will be at on the grocery store shelves, but yet the food's going to be there. You know, these people think so differently than what you and I do. And when it gets to the point that that happens, they'll say, well, there's plenty of food out there. All you need is a new currency and a new constitution. And we have one for you. We have a new currency that's backed by gold and silver. We'll be glad to give it to you if you'll just give us the control over things. After all, they've already taken your house over. You couldn't make your mortgage payment, and you're wondering where you're going to get food for your family down the line. And at this point, you're desperate to the point that it's not riots you're thinking about. It's getting food on the table for the family and giving in a little bit if necessary in order to get it done. They, at this point, are bringing many factors to play. Let me point out some of them. If you have the pencil and paper handy, please jot these down. Last week, Congress passed the Farm Bill. Oh, my goodness. I hope everybody realizes what's happening. Do you realize that by January the 1st of 2014, every dairy product that you have in your house is going to double in price because of the Farm Bill? Last week, Congress passed a second bill. It was, all of these now are in preparation. Keep in mind, they pay off the congressmen and get every bill passed they want passed. They had a bill before Congress and passed last week, Mortgage Debt Release Act. There's not going to be a single short sale after January the 1st of 2014 because people can't afford it. The taxes will be too high, and they can't do it. I mean, this is going to devastate the housing market. There was something else that happened last week. For all practical purposes, the President of the United States of America fired Mr. Bernanke. Oh, I know you heard what the President said, but was it Bernanke saying it, or was it the President saying it? The President said, Mr. Bernanke agrees that he probably has served as well as he could during the time that he's there, and it's about time now for him to move on. That wasn't Bernanke's decision. That was the elite's decision, saying it through the President of the United States of America. The next thing, now all of these are shaping up to January the 1st of 2014. I am not saying that as a date that they will bring about the collapse, but there are so many things that are working toward that end. Think about something else that's going to happen January the 1st of 2014. The health care bill is going to kick in. Now, please, all of you who have heard me on radio shows before, over 4 years ago, when Mr. Fromm was still living, he died about a year and a half ago. He was the man that knew everything that went on behind closed doors. And we were on a phone conversation one day, and he said, there's going to be a health care bill proposed before Congress. And I said, yes, I've heard talk about it. He said, Chaplain, this is not a health care bill. And I said, what? That's what we're being told it is. He said, no, it's not. He said, this is not a health care bill. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Chaplain, this is the final complete control of the American people. He said, first, there was the Patriot Act. And he said, now there's the Health Care Act. And he said, everything is in place for total control. This is not a health care bill, and you do not pay a premium for this health care. You're going to pay a tax. And who is going to collect it? Now, it is said by some very prominent people. In fact, I hope you'll go on YouTube and look at David Janda, Janda. He's so prominent as a physician that he was asked to speak before Congress on the health care bill. That's how well known he is. David Janda said to me on the phone the other day, because I've been on his show a number of times. He has a radio show. And he said, Chaplain, 40% of the healthcare professionals in America will have retired by January the 1st of 2014. I said, David, what do you mean? He said, I have already set a date. Now, this man is in his prime. He's in the middle of his life as a physician. He has already given a date that he's closing down his practice. He has already sold his office building, which he owns himself. That's how wealthy he is as a physician. He says, Chaplain, I'm quitting. And he said, I am estimating from what I am seeing that 40% of the healthcare professionals in America will have quit by January the 1st of 2014. He said they cannot make a living at it under the new healthcare program. And he said that the older ones are retiring because they refuse to do what the healthcare system tells them to do in relation to the patients who come first. And he said, Chaplain, we aren't going to have health care in America after January the 1st. He said, try to go to the emergency room with 40% of the people gone. He said, where are you going to find a doctor? And I'm keeping a record of doctors and doctors and doctors all over America. A brain surgeon in Oregon, I'm not going to give his name, Anita, very close friend of ours, told me this, who knows him and talked to him on the phone. Very prominent brain surgeon. He made the statement the other day. He said, if I am required to abide by the guidelines of the new health care bill, he said 50% of the people that I'm operating on their brains will die on the operating table. He said it can't be done this way. 50% of his patients, he said, would die if he has to follow the dictates of the new health care bill. Now, here's what I did. I realized that all this is shaping up for January the 1st. I am not setting any dates that anything's going to happen that day. But I know that people are going to face some catastrophic events. I have never been willing to do this in the 38 years that I've known these people. But I've had the elite to tell me where they go to get well. I've had them to tell me what they use to get well. You remember that Ronald Reagan, President of the United States of America, was diagnosed with colon cancer while he was president. And he brought into America a substance that was illegal to be used in America at the time, and he took it and never had a reoccurrence of his colon cancer. I have been told over the years what the elite do. Have you ever wondered why they are now in their 80s and 90s and still healthy as can be? Why? They know where to go. They know what to do. Well, they've told me over the years what to do, and it has I think it actually saved my life one time. They told me where to go. I decided I had to tell it. And the day before yesterday, 2 days ago, the 25th, I came out with something I've never done before. An hour and 47 minutes of the secrets of the elite as far as health is concerned. And I said, I've got to tell them in light of the fact that you've got to get certain things in your medicine cabinet now before January the 1st of this year, and I must tell the American people what to do. And 2 days ago, we premiered our new DVD entitled Healing, The Elite Way. Please go to lindseywilliams.net Lindsey, Williams.net. If you want to save your family health problems, if you'd like to know where the elite go, you never need to fear cancer again. You never need to fear diabetes again. You never need to have any concern about heart attacks and stroke. They know exactly what to do and where to go. They have told me, and I tell you in this DVD, and I don't sell it, by the way. I don't sell any of these products. I have nothing whatsoever. I'll only tell you where the elite go and what they do and what they are. Healing, the elite way. Let me give you a toll-free number just in case you don't want to go on the Internet. Call during business hours, 1-888-799-6111. Again, that's toll-free, 888-799-6111. Healing the elite way. And while you're there, please be sure and get the DVD that I made 2 months ago, which will explain much of this monetary that's happening right now. It was entitled New Signs the Elite Have Just Given Me. That was about 2 months ago we produced it, and it deals with the time frame, what they told me to do, and how I should do. You know, it reminds me so much of that expression of the day that I was on the phone with one of these individuals, and he asked me a question that I thought was rather unusual. He said, "Chaplain, how much money do you have in your checking account?" And I knew I was on the phone, and nearly everybody listens in on the phone these days. And I said, he held it for a little while. He saw I wasn't going to answer his question. He said, "Let me rephrase that." He said, "Can you afford to lose what you have in your checking account?" And I said, "No, I can't." He said, "Then, Chaplain, if it's written on a piece of paper, it's worth the paper it's written on." He said, "You better get rid of it." He said, "Anything that you can't afford to lose, you shouldn't have it in paper." Now, basically, I'm trying to help you understand that they are going to bring about an end of anything that's not tangible. If there's any possible way that you can get that house paid for, if there's any way you can afford to pay off all of the debt that you've got, anything that is tangible is what you must get into. You cannot stay in paper, for that paper is going to be worthless. And they could have, as of Monday morning, if they had wanted to, just by keeping that interest rate, that interbank 7-day repo rate, if they had kept it at 12.33, there would have been a collapse on Monday morning of the currency of America, and would have collapsed the derivative market and would have collapsed the entire world. And all they would have to have done was just extended that rate for a few more days, and it would have taken place. So they have things where they want them. In the meantime, you still have a dollar that's worth a fairly decent amount, and it's a glorious opportunity for you to do something about it, Vinny.
I have this other idea as well, that what's going to happen in terms of food, as you're saying with food inflation, that's already going on. If you go into the grocery store and you take some cans that you purchased maybe a few decades or so ago, they're actually larger. They'll be about the same height, but the new ones are a little bit thinner. And what they've done is instead of increasing the price of existing products with existing quantities, they've simply reduced the quantities a little bit and slapped the same price tag on it. Same with the bag of corn chips. You go get a bag of corn chips, and it's a massive bag, and then when you open it, only about maybe the bottom third of the bag has any corn chips in it. It's very deceptive. This is called food inflation. And you know what I think is going to happen? Food inflation will be dovetailed with monetary inflation, and then, because there's no actual real shortage of food at that particular point, it'll be just like the potato famine all over again. In Ireland, there was no actual shortage of potatoes at all. Nobody had to starve, but the British didn't let them have the potatoes that could have helped them survive. And I think the same is going to be done to us, because they have the Agenda 21 protocols and Codex Alimentarius to control health and control the world and control food, indeed, because that is the real killer. If you want to wipe out the population, as the elite have said, by upwards of 90%, you're going to have to come at humanity from every single angle. whether that be financial collapse, you die of starvation, or you die of preventable diseases. It matters not, as long as you die.
That, Vinny, is exactly what this individual was saying to me on the phone that day. There is going to be no shortage on the grocery store shelves. And I said, okay, suppose we do have a drought in some part of America. He said, no problem. We can bring it in from anywhere in the world. He said, Chaplain, there's not going to be a shortage of food and water on the grocery store shelves, but he said the currency is going to lose its purchasing power to the point that you won't be able to go and buy that food because your currency is worth so little. Just take, for instance, the silver dollar. In 1965, you could take a one piece of paper, Federal Reserve note, a $1 piece of paper, and go to a bank, and you could get that silver dollar. Today, you've got to have 20 pieces of that paper to get that silver dollar. They can depreciate the dollar so rapidly that it is going to take 40 or 50 pieces of paper to get that one silver dollar, 70 or 80 pieces of paper. This is currency depreciation. And all they will need to do is raise interest rates. I hope you understand how important it is. Let me give you a figure that was given to me the other day. A 1% rise in interest rates. Now, remember what they did to that bank overnight rate that we talked about a moment ago, from 3.3 to 12.33, just for a couple of hours, just long enough to prove the market. But a 1% rise in interest rates announced by the Federal Reserve would cost the national debt $140 billion, just a 1% rise. Now, we have a $17 trillion national debt. We cannot afford an interest rate. An interest rate would make the national debt cause the United States of America to declare bankruptcy. And if we had that interest rate rise up to 5 to 6%, it would completely collapse the currency of the United States of America. The moment, he gave me this as a sign, the moment that you hear Mr. Bernanke say that interest rates are going to rise, it is over. You don't even have time to get out of the paper that you're in. Now, you are seeing some other signs, though, that will lead you to the point of believing that they are going to do this. Let me give you a few indicators here, and you can go and prove this for yourself very easily. First of all, the U.S. market has declined over the past month. I'm going to give you some things year-to-date or to month. You have no problem understanding the decline in the American market. Now let's look at some others. The Japanese stock market recently dropped 20%. This is drastic. 20% year-to-date. The Chinese stock market, the FXI, has fallen 19.69%. So many people think that China doesn't have a problem. They do. They've got a bigger problem than we have because they've got so many more people than what we have. And their banks have a major problem right now. It's dropped 19.69% year-to-date. The emerging markets, these are the little countries that are beginning to come up. They have depreciated 11.3% in the last month. Do you get the idea here that the powers that be are beginning to bring certain things to fruition so that when they get ready to, they can do what they want to do? Now, for all of those out there who are quite knowledgeable financially, let me give you an item that was given to me by my friend the other day that I thought was very significant. He said to me, he said, Chaplain, do you know what we watch most? And I said, well, I know one thing, it's not Wall Street. He said, well, that's for sure. I said, well, what is it you watch most? He said, well, it's not necessarily gold and silver, even though that is their currency. I said, well, what is it that you watch most? Are you ready? This really startled me, and I'm beginning to watch it now more and more. He said, we watch copper. Yeah, the thing they took out of our pennies. I said, you watch copper? He said, yes. He said, copper is the premier asset considered to be the indicator of growth and contraction. Now, watch what copper did. Copper has contracted 18% since January the 1st. And what are investors watching most? They're not watching Wall Street. They're not watching what the Fed does as much as they're watching copper, because it tells them what happens in the asset consideration. I was just so amazed. I've got a college education from these people. There's no doubt about it. They've taught me so much about what to watch, until I think even if they didn't tell me, I would probably know a few months in advance before something happened. But you can see all of these things beginning to fit into a pattern of what they are doing at this particular time. And then, of course, when they ran this test run a week ago, I was utterly confounded as to what they were doing. And just sitting back in their glorified, beautiful offices up there, just watching this thing hour after hour after hour to see exactly what they could do when they get ready to do it.
Yeah, and Lindsey, I just noticed something. I went to your website, which you have a great website. It's lindseyWilliams.net to the listeners out there, and you could see a lot of what the pastor is talking about, Pastor Lindsey, right now, and what he's talked about for the past several years. But this last post you did on June 20th, 2013, I noticed a bunch of numbers. I'm not big into the occult, meaning I practice any kind of occult magic, but I like to study it because it seems like our world is set up this way. But I noticed several 33s in this post, and I don't know if you caught it, but June 20th, 2013, if you add, of course, the 20 and the 13, you get 33. And then in the post, you're talking about your email, and I noticed several 33s in here as well. It says the benchmark rate for funding costs between banks surged to 12.33%. And then on Wednesday's close, it says, later it had averaged around 3.3% this year before the liquidity crunch. So it's just interesting that they chose, of course, this time of year, they didn't really do anything as far as implode the markets, but they did do a test run, and it seems like it was coinciding with the supermoon that we had on Saturday, and then also all these 33 numbers. So again, I know you're not saying that's what's happening, but I could see it clearly.
Oh, you're right. All of those figures are there. I do agree. I had not seen that because I'm not that much on figures, but thank you so much for bringing it out.
There's some strange phenomenon like that. Recently I've been watching a lot of films on my time off, and one of my habits of watching films on the computer is to take screenshots every single time I see a black and white tiled Masonic floor or some kind of all-seeing eye pyramid or the number 33. Nearly every single film out of hundreds all have these references in them. And it's strange because you understand now how all-encompassing the influence is upon us, and just how saturated the media and everything else really is with these numbers, figures, and symbols. It's as if we really are being raised in some way, shape, or form through subliminal mind control, which, once you're aware of it, is no longer subliminal, of course, to accept these symbols and ideas, practices, things of that nature, demons, if you will, so that we can easily be ushered into this New World Order, death culture kind of thing. It happened in Rome before it fell. Everybody started to become obsessed with death. The youth became despondent. Have a look around at the youth now. They're all playing video games where you kill every single person that you can see, even innocent mothers with their children. And they have no concept of real human interaction because they're all plugged into their iPhones.
Yes, you're so right. That's exactly
Lindsey,
where our culture has come.
You know, Lindsey, that number 33, I'm real familiar with it. It's the number of chaos, basically. You know, the order ab chaos, 33 is 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite. And if you look at all these dates and what's happening, it's all based on chaos. And of course, what happens out of chaos is order. Is the goal I know it's control, it's a new world order, we accept a new constitution, all these countries are all aligned with one another in one united world currency. Once they have all this set up, is the goal complete dictatorship from birth to death with Obamacare, with our banking, with everything? We're literally going to live in a scientific dictatorship hell on earth? Or is this a transition period where, I know you're a follower of the Bible and Revelations, where we go through these dark times and it's always darkest before dawn? Is it they get their control, they set in these parameters that makes them happy, and then they usher in the New World Order, they see what happens, and then slowly, get in those plans as far as reducing the world population, get rid of all these plastic products and all these jobs that a lot of us have that are actually, we're not helping the world or our fellow man, we're actually creating more strife and, stuff like that. Are they going to create a hell to get to heaven, or are we going to live in a permanent hell? What's your thoughts on that?
What the elite want and what God is going to do is two different things. They want a new world order. They want utter, total control of every facet of every person's life. They want to bring in total chaos so that out of it they can bring in total control under the auspices of the New World Order. And they will bring this world back out of the mess it's in. That's exactly what they will attempt, and they will. If they had their way, they would gradually bring back an economy, a society under their total control, and that's what they want. Fortunately, I have read the last chapter, and I know Jesus Christ personally as my Savior, and I know who is going to have the ultimate control because I've read his book. And according to the Scriptures, there is a point at which the Supreme Being, the Creator of all heaven and earth, is going to step in, and sin will have to go out the back door, so to speak. When he steps in, it's going to make a complete reversal, and he will do it at some point. How far he will allow this thing to go before he does, I have not the slightest idea. I do think one thing, though. I am really excited over something. I think there's a very real possibility that we in the United States of America are going to be the only country on the face of this earth that are going to see something different happen than what happens to everybody else. Let me try to explain what I mean. Back when you had that Sandy Hook event, and our president came out and said, I will do everything in my power to put in legislation so that an event like this never will happen again with handguns. There was something that took place at that point that the elite did not expect. They expected the United States of America to do the same thing that Australia did and give in. Same thing England did. The same thing Canada did, and turn in their guns. The Americans didn't. The Americans did the exact opposite. And the president couldn't even get a bill out of committee, much less get it into the House or the Senate. And he became the greatest salesman of firearms and ammunition of any president that's ever been president of the United States of America. The American people did something that was an exact opposite reaction to what every other nation on the face of the earth has done. It's because of the Yankee inborn intuition of generations and generations and generations of freedom in this country that is kind of inborn into the genes of the people. And instead they said, no, Mr. President, you aren't going to do that, and nobody else is going to do it either. And they literally bought out every gun, every piece of ammunition that you could think of in gun stores with months and months of wait, and it literally scared the elite to death. I hope you're catching this, because I get it. I hear it from them. I've got email after email I've stored away here. It scared the daylights out of them because they realize that they've got a nation, the United States of America, that is not going to bow like the other nations of the world did. And I think there is a very real possibility that America may be the one nation that will successfully rebel against the New World Order's method and way of doing things. And I think there's some hope here. Because I know one thing, they are scared. And that said more to them than anything else that the American people could have ever done to them.
You know what this reminds me of is Adam Kokesh. Adam Kokesh was organizing a armed protest, chaplain, an armed protest in Washington where everybody would have rifles loaded but slung. So nobody was planning to fire a shot. It was simply a representation that the American people are armed and are prepared to defend the Constitution with force if necessary against tyranny. He got arrested for no reason at a protest and was disappeared, and I don't know what's happened to him. Perhaps he's been released, don't know. But there's so many reasons why people would suspect that this person would be targeted and, well, basically black-bagged and disappeared, like in the old Soviet days.
Could have went to Guantanamo, right?
Pardon?
He could be in Guantanamo.
He could be. He could be in some kind of deep underground military bases where they're probing him with all sorts of nasty business for all we know. But who cares? You know, well, just as long as the American people realize that force is the one thing that you can't defend against with a piece of paper or a piece of writing. You can't stop a man with a gun from shooting you by saying you've got rights. You don't at the point that they're going to murder you en masse, do you?
Well, it frightened the elite, and they realize that they have a people to deal with like no other people on the face of the earth. And it may accelerate that program. That's the reason that I have begged on your program today. Don't wait. Don't take a chance on another 6 months. You can't play around with this. They already know now what they can do, and they can do it any weekend they want to do it. They may, if they get frightened enough, because they have the power to be able to do it. So don't wait around. Let me point out another item here, too, that I think is very well could be a catastrophic event in the very near future. I'm going back to June the 12th of 2013, not too many weeks ago. And on that day, J.P. Morgan announced that their vault gold, now let me try to explain, nations and super wealthy people buy gold. And they have people like J.P. Morgan, Comex, banks in Europe, they happen to hold it in vaults for them. And they're given a piece of paper saying that the gold is there, and anytime they want it, they can have physical delivery. Well, something happened. First of all, Chavez, before he died, he ordered all of his gold back to Venezuela. Well, Germany got the idea, well, maybe the gold is not out there. I better ask for mine. And then China and India and on and on. This became a fad within the past few weeks that super wealthy and nations all over the world are demanding physical delivery of their gold, and it's not there. It doesn't exist. The amount that they say is there isn't there. Well, J.P. Morgan on June the 12th of 2013 announced that they were the first one to actually make an announcement so that you could see what they were doing. And J.P. Morgan announced on that date that their gold vault dropped by 28.4% overnight. 28.4% overnight because they had 6,208. They even gave the figure. They had 6,208 people or nations who demanded physical delivery almost within a matter of days. Then they went on to say something that the average person didn't pick up on. They said that within a month to a month and a half, if this trend continues, that they will have no more gold in their vault. That means that other places are going to be out too. Gold vaults in Europe are going to disappear. And they're going to have to tell you how much is in Fort Knox. And whenever it's announced that J.P. Morgan, the Comex, whatever it may be, their gold vaults now have no more gold in them, what's going to happen? Now, think about something. Why has the price of gold and silver kept plummeting, even this morning? I wouldn't be surprised at all if gold didn't go down to $1,100. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. Almost to $1,000. Why? Do you realize that J.P. Morgan now is desperate? And if J.P. Morgan's desperate, So are all of the other gold vaults in the world, because they're also having people demand physical delivery. And do you realize how desperate they are to get gold so that they don't have to admit they don't have any more? They had to drive the price of gold down as far as they could possibly get it so that they themselves could afford to go and buy it in order to keep on delivering physically the gold, so they wouldn't have to admit that they don't have it in their vault. And it's my opinion that they are buying metric tons of gold at the cheapest price they can possibly drive the price down to, so that they can deliver on these who are demanding physical delivery. They know, as well as my name is what it is, that the day that the powers that be decide to bring about the collapse, that there is no more gold out there in the vaults, and the price is going to skyrocket overnight. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see $3,000 an ounce gold. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see $75 to $100 an ounce silver. It is going back there. It has been depressed intentionally right now. But what you're seeing, oh, please, I feel so sorry for some people who are selling. You're going to wish that you never had, because it is their currency. They are going to back the New World Order currency with it, with the gold and the silver. And if you sell now, you will be taking such a loss. All you've got to do is just hold on for a while, because it has to go back up again.
Hey, Lindsey, we're going to be wrapping up the show here in the next 5 to 10 minutes, and I wanted to leave our audience with some solutions, because I know that you are big into this. I know you have DVDs as far as the healing one you had mentioned, Healing the Elite. Is there any kind of teasers or anything that we can give the audience some help or solutions that might help them with their everyday lives at home and their family to maybe somewhat prepare for what is to come? Even though I know you had said there's no date set, they're going to do it. It's just a matter of when. And you had said possibly, January the 1st, there's a lot of stuff happening with all these bills that we might see a rapid inflation happen at that time. Can you give the audience, even myself, I would love to hear some ideas and solutions you could help us out with.
This is one of the most wonderful opportunities you can ever imagine right now, a window of opportunity for you to do something. And there's so much that you can do. Back about 6 months ago, I produced a DVD series entitled The Next 4 Years. Then we did a second DVD series entitled How to Survive the Next 4 Years. Yes, there are many things you can do. Some of the things maybe you've never even thought of. I'll try to put it, if I can, in simple terms this way. Get out a paper. That's the first thing that you need to do. If it is written on a piece of paper, it is worth the paper it's written on. And you need to get out a paper of all forms, and you need to get into tangibles. Now, tangible can be many things. It can be a paid-for roof over your head. Then the Federal Reserve can't come and take it because they don't have your mortgage anymore. The New World Order can't take it because unless they, well, I don't think would be the reason that they could, because you couldn't pay the taxes. But any person who owns a piece of property outright needs to have enough gold and silver that when the currency does drop in its purchasing power to a certain point, that you can take that gold and silver and buy whatever the new currency is with it and be able to pay off the taxes on your house for 4 to 5 years. So there are a lot of little things that you can do. Getting out of paper means get into tangibles. Now, tangible is not always gold and silver. A tangible can be that paid-for roof over your head. It can be a spot of land that you can grow a garden on. And a tangible can be gold and silver. And right now, this probably hasn't been as wonderful an opportunity to buy gold and silver as far as price is concerned as there is today. And I don't sell it, but you can tell people where to go and get it. And there are so many things that you can do. You know, I did something recently, and I'll just bring personal into this for a moment, if I may. I have always told people that you need to have between the mattress at home a certain amount of cash that whenever things really do come apart, that you can rely on this for a reasonable period of time while the economy is trying to stabilize itself again. And I said, if you can afford 3 months, fine. If you can afford 6 months, fine. I said, if you can afford a year, just figure out what it costs you to run your house for a year and get it out of the bank. Get it into into something that you can use. I said, get it. Well, I've come to realize now in the past few months, since some of the elite are telling me some things, I'm coming to realize that all of that cash between the mattress, yeah, you need a little bit. But I'm afraid that most everybody had too much there. Because do you realize that whenever they do decide to raise this interest rate, as they did test run here a week ago, that they could have said, okay, the bank's closed. Any cash that you have X number of days to bring it in, and we'll exchange it, but we'll exchange it for a certain percentage, less than what its value was. We'll depreciate it 30%. Maybe we'll depreciate it 50%. It has really become dangerous to keep a large amount of cash of any kind whatsoever. You need enough to take care of yourself for X number of days. But I've come to realize that if you took that cash in and they said, okay, we're going to issue you new currency, they are going to say, you pay taxes on it. Where did you get it from? How did you get that between the mattress? Was this contraband someplace that you got it? Can you prove where you got it? And they're going to say, okay, we'll exchange it with you at a certain rate, but you'll also pay taxes on it at the same time. You want to be very careful. Seek out the Lord's will as to what you should do, and then know where you're going, because many things have changed within the past few months. And so you need to prepare your household according to your particular lifestyle. Many of you will remember that about 3 years ago, I did a survey of where the elite live. I don't remember all of them. I remember a number of names, but I didn't remember exactly where they were or how to get in touch with them. And so I got in touch with one of my friends, and I asked them where the elite are. And he started naming off this person and that person and that person that we had known mutually back years ago. And I said, where do they live? And he told me. I found out that not a single one of these elite had their primary residence inside of a city limits. I hope you're catching this. Every single one of them live out away from everywhere in their primary residence. Oh yeah, they may have an office downtown someplace that they can stay at a penthouse, but their primary residence. And I was amazed how many of these people are living in Alaska now, away from everything. They know what's going to happen. They know that there is the possibility of civil unrest, even though that's not what they want. As a result, they have prepared themselves. And the very things that you see some of them doing are the things that you can also do in order to prepare your household. You positively can save yourself from great heartache if you will start right now. While the dollar still has a certain amount of purchasing power, you need to do some things that you know will help to save your family when it comes down to that point.
All right, Chaplain Lindsey Williams, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for giving us your time, your knowledge, and just your very presence is generally quite uplifting, and also scares the living bejesus out of you at the same time. It's quite fascinating.
Lord bless. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Mo, for allowing me to be on your show. It has been a privilege.
Yeah, and thank you, Lindsey. Your website, again, is lindsey.williams.net. Everything that the pastor has talked about on the show today, you could find there. He has an email list. Sign up for that. His DVDs and presentations that he had talked about, Healing with the Elite. And again, I love listening to you, and you give us hope. I know you're warning us about what is to come, and you don't put any dates, and I love that. But you also give us hope, that we need to prepare, and we need to write it out, and we also need to pray. And whoever, if you're a Christian or you have another religion out there, pray to your God and ask for forgiveness and whatever you may need to do, but also prepare. Don't just sit there with your head between your legs, or the ostrich with his head in the sand. We all need to prepare and be ready, and not live in fear at the same time.
Thank you, gentlemen.